equivalent. Okay? Equivalent. So, what is it? Would it give me an example of something that is equivalent, but not identical? Two things.
Different names, same meaning?
Different names, same meaning. Just everyday. Don't give me a philosophical example. Give me an example in everyday life.
My daughter and Geshe.
Very good. No. Your daughter and Geshe, there are other Geshets.
Water in...
There's only one.
I ignore.
So, the Geshe...
Okay, my daughter and Karen's daughter. We have only one daughter.
Okay.
My daughter and Karen.
But there's other Karen.
Yeah, very good. His wife Karen.
Yeah, but there's other Karen.
Yeah, okay, but I know what you meant. So, Karen, Shacha's wife, Karen's daughter, and his daughter. Okay, so those are equivalent, but not identical. They're different. They're not identical. Because identical means they appear to the mind in the same way. But they don't appear exactly in the same way. When I say Karen's daughter, she appears slightly differently. When I say Shacha's daughter, she appears slightly differently. So that's the power of words. Words and meaning. So what it refers to is the same thing, but it appears to me slightly differently. So they're not identical. Being identical or not means the words, I use them to describe, and the meaning are the same. But when I say Kesef, no, what's her name? I always try to be sure I don't use the word kesef. Keshet. Yeah. Keshet and keshet. Keshet is one with keshet. Okay? If I just say keshet, that means same thing. So keshet is one with keshet and only with keshet. Alright, so here we're talking about how things appear from the point of view of different names, same meaning. That is one way in which two things can be different. So Karen's daughter and his daughter, and here I'm saying strict philosophy. I'm not talking about everyday life. That would be ridiculous to say it's not the same. But just from the point of view of how it appears to the mind, his daughter, Karen's daughter, they're different but equivalent. Yeah. And then you can have this relationship of, well, my arm and me. All right? Different, but of one nature, not equivalent. I'm not my arm and my arm is not me. But one is a part of me, so of one nature. Or you could have animal and cat. Okay, one instance of animal, which is cat, of one nature. They're different. There's something that is both. There's something that is an animal, something that is a cat, but still they're not the same. Whatever is a cat, whatever is an animal is not necessarily a cat. And then you can have totally unrelated. This AC and me. Unrelated. I could depend on it, or there's a certain type of dependence. I'm different from this, so for me to be different from this, I depend on it, but it's a different form of dependence. It's a very rough kind of dependence. So you see, different can mean so many different things. Okay? Now here, I have a sense this I is part of me. I don't really feel that the I, this is also something we discuss in great detail. How does the I appear in relation to my aggregates? Does it appear as totally separate? Well, it doesn't. Because when my body gets sick, I still say I get sick. Which means innately we have a sense they connect. We actually have a sense they connect. When I say I, that's why I say I get sick when my body gets sick. Otherwise, if I really felt innately there's no connection, I wouldn't say that. So that proves, that shows that on one hand, I have an inherent I that appears to me, there's a sense of an inherent I, but at the same time, I feel that I connects to my body. Right? When you hit me, I say they hit me. I feel like my leg is somehow a part of my body, but still it seems... So here we're arguing, if the I really existed, this I, the way it appears, either would be one with my body and mind, that doesn't make sense, so then it would be different. But different here would mean it exists as an independent entity. That's how it appears. It doesn't just appear as being merely labeled. No, it appears as having its own nature, able to define itself. I don't need to define it. It is able to define itself. Stand on its own feet. It's just there. that means it exists independently, which means it cannot depend on mind and body. Therefore, the logic works. Am I making sense? So after all this roundabout, took me a long time to get there, but I told you, these texts, the first verse is always, the beginning is always the hardest. Okay? That wasn't maybe true for the 26th chapter, but here it's right getting at the logic of it. So I can lead you through the meditation and kind of like hope you don't get it, but why would the difference, what would different mean in this case? So this needs to be specified, because even the conventionally existent I and my mind and body, they're different. But they really depend on each other. They actually do depend on each other in the way I just said. Mind and body is the basis of imputation on which I say I, and that's why it's I, and not more and not less. Okay? Does that make sense?
Nagarjuna is usually so precise. I mean, why?
He's very precise, and that is still precise. He is totally precise. This is like the logic we need to get at. It's like...
So for
Yeah.
having being of one nature just doesn't mean different.
Being of one nature means different. If two things are of one nature, they're different.
For Nagarjuna would be
For everyone.
but then I will have the characteristics of my
Pardon?
sound. But in that case, it's different, but I still have the characteristics of my body.
Yes, exactly. If I say two things are of one nature, I don't say Keshet and Keshet is of one nature. That doesn't make sense. If I have to bring two things to be of one nature. I say Kain's daughter and Shacha's daughter, they're of one nature. I bring two things to say they are of one nature. Like Vas is of one nature. Vas is of one nature with what? Something different. Right? So Nagarjuna doesn't need to mention it. There's no need. I mean, he could mention it, but anyway, it would disturb the meter, and everyone understands what this is meant. I mean, everyone knows, but you understand it first, you think about it. Once you understand the logic, then you sit down to meditate. Right? They never say this. Oftentimes they just say here it says there's nothing there, there's no self. That doesn't literally mean there is no self, it means there's no inherently existent self. But since at some point when you learn this, you know this, when you say the I is either one with the aggregates or different, right? At some point, but that's why we study. We understand, oh, here different just means unrelated. That's the consequence of it. And the way you do the meditations, it's always implied. Always, right? Then if the I existed separate from mind and body, then there was no reason for saying I get sick when the body gets sick. That's usually the argument. Or you could find the I as separate from the body. Okay, as like a separate entity, always implying they're totally separate. Does that make sense? Okay.
When I label myself,
Yes.
do I label it on the basis of my body and my mind?
Well, the first step, this is actually an interesting question. What comes first? Labeling I, or labeling my mind and my body, and then labeling I? That's her question, basically, right? So Varda is saying, do I label the I on the basis of my mind and my body? Or do I label I on the basis of mind and body, and then label my mind and my body? What comes first? That's basically what she's asking. I guess, I hope.
I thought that it's very strange to label I on something mine when it doesn't exist. When my body and my mind don't exist.
Huh? They don't exist? Of course they exist.
They're not mine. So I label I first.
Ah, unless you label, okay, but I'm not sure that's what Varda means. So Boaz is saying, before I've identified mine, right?
Before I identify I don't have mine.
So before I identify I cannot have my mind and my body. So actually Varda is saying, for the first time when I label I guess that's what she's saying. She didn't specify, but when I label I for the first time, when do you label I for the first time on this mind and body? In this lifetime or a previous life?
This life.
Shaha, you listen to what I said. When you label I on the basis of this mind and this body. When do you label that for the first time? This life or previous life? This life. Yeah, this one, exactly. Yeah, so this life, for the first time, there was a moment when I labeled I for the first time. There must have been a time I labeled I for the first time in this life, on the basis of this body. Okay? This is so bizarre, because let's say in the previous life I was a little dog, and I loved my little furry body. So attached, I cleaned it every day. My little furry body, you know, someone threw stones at us, I was disturbed, I got scared. And now in this life, I gave it up, and now I'm totally attached to this, as if there was never anything else. So there must have been a moment thinking I based on this body, right? Labeling I on this body. So, but before, as Boaz says, it must have been first labeling I, and only then I label my mind, my body. Okay? And then later on, oh, they hurt me because they hurt my body. That works later on, right? So you don't have to do this over and over again. For the first time, you label I. And then based on that, oh, my body, my mind, okay? And later on then, if someone hurts you, if someone injures you, then you say I.
I'm just saying there's a problem to say labeling is my mind, because labeling is like an operation that your mind is doing. So we talk about it as if it's two different things, but your part of my mind is my ability to label.
But I don't know that yet, that it's my mind. In that moment I don't label yet. It is my mind already. It is my mind already. But I have not labeled yet. You don't have to label. It's not like you have to label. This is only your body when you start labeling it. Even if you label later on, you can still say
that's... There's no problem with the body, but the mind labels itself in a way. There's no labeling without your mind.
Well, your mind can label itself. What's the problem?
It can, but it's the same. Like we're talking about.
Okay, that which labels and that which is labeled.
It's a self-reflecting.
No, but I label I on the basis of. So you can label yourself. I mean, you can even say the I labels itself. When the mind labels, the I labels, and it labels I. So there's no issue. Actually, I don't think there's any problem, unless I just don't see it. Irit. Sorry, okay. Sorry, Irit, before, Shachar wanted to respond to that. You wanted to respond to what she said?
Yeah. Just a comment that in the modern psychology, they say that the baby's first I refers to the mother's body. They see that the mother and themselves are one. That's what they claim in the modern psychology. So actually, the first I is actually not our body.
Wait. Theoretically, if that is really the case, we don't know 100%. So, but they're labeling I as like being, well, maybe in that moment, if they label I on the basis of the mother, okay, fair enough. Then there's an interesting sense of an I we have had at some point. Which, if you label like that, and you refer to yourself as your mother part of it, that's not wrong. It's not wrong. It's just a different way in which we label. Okay? I've also argued that at times when we can actually label, as in like we can label another person as being part of us. I wonder about Siamese twins. Is there a sense of like you share the same body, therefore you label I on that same body? Right? You could actually use the same basis of imputation and label I. That's also possible. Okay? Yes, but Shachar, you wanted to respond?
It's not the mind labeling mind, it's the mind labeling I. It's a different I and the mind a different entity. It's the mind is labeling, but the label itself is on a different entity which is I. It's not the mind labeling my I.
But then I argued the I labels I. It's also the I labeling. If the,
do you label first my mind?
That is, but I don't know what she's saying. I think she's not arguing about what you label first. That was Varda's question, right? What do you label first? What comes first? And her point was, well, if the mind that labels uses itself as the basis of labeling I, how does that work? The mind that labels, it's like,
we just talked about it as two different things. As someone who's labeling the mind, as if the I can label the mind, as if the
labeling mind is the basis of the labeling mind is the basis of imputation of I. The labeling mind is also the basis of imputation of that which is labeled.
My mind? My labeled mind? No, because my question was, because the I is only labeled, how can the labeled I label itself on a my body which is not, if the I is labeled, then
The mind and body is also labeled as my body and my mind, so that works. Okay, anyway.
So anyway, you would have to say that I labeled I not on the basis of my body. That would be the...
I label I on the basis of mind or body.
No, not on the basis of my body.
Why not?
Because it wasn't my body which I labeled I.
No. The first time that is true. In general, I can label I on the basis of even my mind and my body. Just the very first time.
First time is a crucial one, but then since I'm going with the wrong body. You know, it's like...
Well, the first time may be crucial, but that still doesn't make it wrong to say I label I on the basis of my mind and my body. Because most of the time I do. Most of the time, he hit me. He hurt my feelings because he hit me in the butt. He hit my butt, right? My behind. Anyway, all right, that should be enough to reflect a little bit of the debate part, the kind of analysis. But what is said here, I think, is pretty straightforward. So, going back to this text again, and of course we could go on endlessly, but this kind of analysis we should do on our own. So when you meditate, of course, if you can do it in a group, we did this analysis for years, again and again. One nature, different nature, how do they relate? And just to give you a sense of, we should not just take it on, but either reflect on, well, debate with each other, or with ourselves. What does that mean? One different. And exactly like Vada brought it up, Boaz did, Shachar, like, what comes first? For instance, this kind of, and also what you said, the I that labels, the mind that labels is the basis of imputation of the mind that labels. Like, what? And see whether that works or not. Okay. Anyway, having done this part, so we see that this verse is basically the central verse of this chapter, or the most difficult one. So if the aggregates, okay, now a few words need to be said before you can read the first verse. So implied by this is saying, if the inherently existent I really existed, it would either be one with the aggregates or different from the aggregates. If the aggregates were one with the I, if the aggregates were the self, or the self were the aggregates, it would have to arise and cease. We haven't explained that yet. We have a sense that the I is unchanging. Right? There's a set of, like, yesterday's I and today's I, there's no difference. The I that came into this room and the I that is here right now, they're the same. Okay? I may intellectually believe that they change, but if I think that yesterday's I and this I, they're the same. Okay? If I were to believe that, if I say, for instance, if someone hurt me yesterday and I feel like, I still feel hurt. He hurt my feeling, I'm still hurting. That seems to imply that the I that was hurt yesterday and the I that is still hurting are the same. So to my mind, it appears as if yesterday's I and today's I are the same. Implying, therefore, if that were really true, the I would not change from moment to moment, because yesterday's I and today's I are identical. Okay? So we have a sense of a permanent I. I hold a grudge. I'm angry with someone today because of what they did yesterday. Because there's a sense, this is the same person who hurt my feeling. Can you get in touch with that sense of another person? When you still feel upset with them right now, it is only because you feel this person is the same as yesterday. If you had a sense this person has changed, you may be angry with the one yesterday, but why would you be angry with the person today? They have changed. Okay? So that implies that, or implied by that, or through this you can understand if there's a sense that yesterday's I and today's I are the same, therefore there's a sense of the I not changing. But mind and body, if the I were the aggregates, the body's changing, the mind is changing, so then the I also has to change. And the I that seems so solid and permanent wouldn't make sense. So Irit actually mentioned this argument before. She also talked about this life, for instance. We say that there's a sense that the I continues from one life to the next. If you believe in reincarnation, you then believe, if you believe in an inherent I, you believe that this inherent I goes from one life to the next. But how could it be if it's the mind and body if you leave behind this body? You obviously leave the body behind. So if the I were the aggregates, mind and body, you couldn't continue on to the next life. Okay. So it would have to arise and cease. If it were different from the aggregates, and here again, like I said before, different would mean disconnected, because if it really existed, it would be independently existent. That's how it appears. Therefore, it would not have the characteristics of the aggregates. Now, once I understand through this analysis, so you see it's about negating. I cannot be found. It's not about how it exists. I brought it in, but the emphasis is much more on cannot be found, cannot be found, cannot be found. So then when you have a sense, ooh, there's nothing there, then is the time, how does it actually exist? Okay? So first we need to negate, because otherwise we have an inherently existent I, which we now try to understand how it exists conventionally. We try to then take this inherently existent I and make that work conventionally. Of course, that doesn't work either. All right.
Can you explain the last transition? Because it would not have the characteristics of the aggregates. It means that if they had mutual characteristic, then...
If the I existed inherently, it would be independent of mind and body. So, what do I say about myself? For instance, I say about you, you're clever. You're a clever person. But if you exist as totally separate from the aggregates, your cleverness relates to your mind. So being clever is a characteristic of your mind, of your mental consciousness. But then it wouldn't be your characteristic because you and your mind are separate. So you have the characteristic of being kind. Again, it's a certain type of awareness that is kind, and therefore we say you are kind. Okay? Or I would say, what's your name? Ga. Gal. Oh, you have this really nice name. Nir, Gal. There's 3 words, very easy. Gal. Okay, so Gal, if I say Gal is tall, being tall is Gal's body's characteristic. So I can't say Gal is tall. I can't use a characteristic of his body to describe Gal, because they're separate. So no characteristic of the aggregates could in any way describe the self. So what can I say about Gal? Can't say he's kind. Can't say he's clever. Can't say he's tall. Can't say he's hungry. Can't say... What can I say about Gal?
His name is Gal.
Well, no, it's not his name. That's the name given to the body when he was born. Right? His parents perceived... Like, given to a boy. Like, they perceived a boy. That's the body, right? Is Gal a girl name? Yeah, but I think for your parents it was a boy's name, right? Okay, or boss. If you call someone boss, that's definitely not a girl that's called boss, right?
Wait 10 years.
Yeah, but not right now. Not right now. Why? Because it's based on the body. Okay? Alright. So, therefore, does that make sense? The characteristics of the... Am I making sense? Okay, so that's most important. Now, the rest is not that difficult. If there is no I that can be found, can't be any mind. There's no I, there's no mind. You don't need to go through the same logic again. Can't find the I, there's no mind. Right? If you chat with someone online, imagine you fall in love with this person online. You fall deeply in love with this guy or with this girl, and they really understand you. You've never met them, but you've seen photographs. And you're so in love, you're so taken by them, right? Then when you realize, oh, that was just a computer program, whoops, I or her beauty, his understanding, gone. There's no longer a sense of this person, this intrinsic, whatever, gal, or I don't know, yael, whatever. No, it's gone. And her beauty, his da-da-da-da, her intelligence, all that is gone. Same for us. If there's no I, you don't say, my this, my that. Right? No, inherently. No, this and that of that inherent I. The I that appears. Does that make sense? Look like you have a question mark. Gal has a question mark.
Actually, there's a movie about a guy that falls in a computer software, so it's actually.
Ah, I have a problem. But you fall in love with the computer software, but you didn't believe it was a person. You fall in love with the person. You fall in love with an actual person, and then you find out it's a computer.
No, that was the thing. He thought it was a person. Then after he understood it was a computer thing, so his mind started project like. I guess that he just
a movie.
felt betrayed.
I'm kidding. All right, maybe that's possible. Maybe that's actually.
4 kids.
Pardon?
By now they have 4 kids.
4 little computers. Okay. All right. Anyway, so maybe that is possible, and maybe the example doesn't work, but for a lot of people it works. Maybe not for that person. All right. Great. So, if the self did not exist, how could there be mind? Owing to the pacification, getting rid of the sense of pacification of like this holding on to I and mine, there will be no holding on to I and mine. So if you no longer believe there's I and mine, what are you attached to? Self-centeredness is the type of awareness which is attached to I and my happiness. Okay, so first we have a misperception of reality. Then it exaggerates the importance of that I and the importance of my happiness, which gives rise to attachment to I and my happiness. That is self-centeredness. Okay? So very important. First you add more, you feel, and after all this discussion, hopefully that's a little bit clear, how there's a sense of an independent I, but if it were just to stop there, we'd be fine. The Buddha would have never said a word. Right? If it was just stopped at that, just a misapprehension and then that's it. No, but it gives rise to all these other types of mind. First of all, it gives rise to another misperception. We already believe there's an inherently existent I. Then we believe that this I is more important. This I's happiness is more important. And the next step is attachment. My life, my happiness, so now it's all about I and all about my happiness. Right? It goes from just a natural wish of the mind to be happy to an obsession. The natural wish to be happy, that's fine. Even the Buddha wants to be happy, wants to be peaceful. Well, not in the same way as we do, but definitely the natural sense, the natural state of mind is of being happy. So that is also true for a Buddha. However, now, because of this exaggeration of the I, we are attached to I and mine. All right, so that is what it says in 2. So if the I did not exist, how could there be mine? All right. Owing to the pacification, owing to pacifying this misapprehension, there will be no holding onto, no attachment to I and mine. He who does not hold on to I and mine does not exist either. So now what our mind does, okay, first I understand I and mine don't exist. I can kind of imagine that it's possible to realize I and mine don't exist. But then the person meditating on that, they must be a little bit more real. Very interesting how our mind, the things, like the misperception of reality, okay, that is wrong. I and mine don't exist. But the person who understands that, possibly a Buddha, he exists truly, she exists truly. Can you get a sense of like how you now transfer, you say, oh, an ordinary person like myself, I don't exist inherently. But someone who understands that, maybe a Buddha's a little bit more real, right? His Holiness the Dalai Lama, just a little bit more inherently good. I'm just ordinary. Actually, the mind does that. We have this tendency of then seeing the Buddha as inherently good, okay? Love and compassion, wisdom becomes inherently good. So we transfer this, all right? But he who does not hold on to I and mine, so someone who has let go, has overcome, has let go, has overcome the sense of I and mine, they also don't exist inherently.
But we need it, and it works even without a third party. If I don't exist, if mine don't exist, if the I who holds to something that doesn't exist, Not even the mind who let go of the holding exists.
Yes, okay.
We need it for ourselves.
That is also true. It says he at the beginning, but it could also be like in he is only in English, you kind of say that, but in the Tibetan it says that which holds.
Yeah.
So that which holds could also be the mind. So yes.